Alright, hey guys, I just got done playing Final Fantasy II, as you just saw. Decided to record this review with Audacity instead of through my webcam program, since the audio quality on the first one was just really bad. And I actually have some notes this time for my review, just to help keep things a bit more concise and constructed and not so all over the place. So it should be a little bit more detailed, I think. One thing I think I decided I'm going to do with these reviews is I'm going to kind of build them on top of each other. Like, when I get done with one game, I'll compare it to some of the similar aspects in the past game or games, if it's relevant to more than one. I don't know, I'm not going to make references to future games, even though I may have already played them, like Final Fantasy 7 and 8, because it doesn't really make sense to compare games that came out technically before later ones in the series. Even though I played like the GBA versions of 1 and 2, which that was released after 7 and 8, but the original games came out before. Duh. Anyway, so yeah, we'll get right into what I thought about Final Fantasy II. I'm going to start with the aspect of the game that had that I was the most skeptical about, which was the advancement system. If you didn't already know, there are no levels in Final Fantasy II. There's no experience points in Final Fantasy II. You don't have predetermined, you don't start level 1 and then go to level 2. Every single attribute that your characters have, you level up individually on your own through specific actions in combat. I'll go ahead and say off the bat, overall, I actually enjoyed it, which I was surprised to find. I thought it was going to be a pain in the butt. From what my friends told me and from what I read online, I did do some research before I started playing about the system, just so I knew some of the basics of how it worked. But yeah, I actually thought it was pretty cool. I don't think I've played an RPG with a system like this, even though it's a pretty old system. It was, they didn't really change anything, I don't think, from the original version of Final Fantasy II. But the majority of RPGs I've played had the standard, leveling system. A couple of them didn't, but it wasn't really like this. I liked it mainly because it made grinding not as boring. It didn't make it any shorter, but it wasn't as simple as the case of in Final Fantasy 1, where I would just spam, attack and try to get through the battle as quickly as possible. I had to actually go into the fight and go, okay, what do I need to level up? Do I need to level up my magical spells? Do I need to level up my attack? Do I need to get someone's HP up, etc.? And then I had to think. I mean, it wasn't rocket science, but it wasn't, close your eyes and spam something. So yeah, it was pretty cool, actually. Your characters, they weren't like jobs. You could have a character do everything. You could choose to specialize a character just based on what you did in combat. If you wanted a character to have a lot of HP, they had to take a lot of damage. The system was originally designed so that your characters would grow based on the necessities of what they did in combat. The more you attacked with a character, the more their physical strength and weapon skills would grow. The more damage you took with a character, the more his HP and evasion and agility, etc., would grow to compensate for that damage. The more you cast magic with a character, the higher your MP would get, the higher your magic spells and stats would get to make you a better caster. Pretty self-explanatory stuff, really. There are a few. It is a system that is easily taken advantage of. It's easy to overpower your characters if you know what you're doing. And I did, read up on some tips and tricks on how to build my characters beforehand, so it did make the game pretty easy. You could end up attacking, like, if you wanted to build your own HP, you could use your characters to attack that person you wanted to build HP on, get his health down pretty low, finish out the fight, and you had a good chance for his HP to go up. So it was easy to really not really level since there's no levels, but really power up your characters with this system. I also feel it doesn't really add as much replay value to the game as the jobs did in the first game. Simply because with the first game, you could go through the game again with completely different jobs, with all of one job, or mixing and matching of, like I had, one warrior, one thief, one red mage, and one white mage. You could go through the game with all white mages. You could go through the game with 2 red mages and 2 thieves or something. You could challenge yourself or just have fun screwing around with a really obscure combination. With Final Fantasy II systems, you can build your characters differently, but you're going to end up with the same kind of deal, no matter what. I mean, you could, like, I had Furion, the main character, I had him built kind of as an all-around jack-of-all-trades. He could attack, he had a decent amount of HP and MP, he could cast, he could pretty much do it all. I had Maria set up mostly as a caster. I attacked with her occasionally, but mostly she was casting spells every round. Guy, I was originally going to build him as just a straight-up melee tank type character, get his physical strength up, get his HP up a lot. Eventually I was told by my friends that he's actually a good person to put Berserk on and status effects on, so I eventually did that. But I still mainly built him as a physical attacker. Or you can make everyone able to do everything, or you can make a character, focus only on white magic while another focuses on black magic. But I still don't feel like that's going to change enough to warrant, playing the game through again. It's one of those, like with most Final Fantasy games, you're only going to play through it again after it's been a while and you have that nostalgia factor kick in and you want to go back and play through it again. But yeah. Another thing about the system was it wasn't really dependent on monster difficulty until after a certain point. Early on, I could pretty much level up myself going back to like the original town. It's just leveling up off of like goblins and hornets, the weakest monsters in the game, because a lot of how I leveled was more what I was doing to my own characters, not what the enemies were doing to me. Like if I wanted to level up HP, I would level it up by my guys attacking my own guys, not really taking damage from monsters. And with magic, I would, repeatedly cast buff spells, repeatedly cast attack magic on my own party to level it up. So I wasn't really dependent on having difficult monsters to fight until later in the game. There was a certain point where I think, mainly with weapon skills, after you reach a certain level, it's hard to build them up anymore. You have to actually fight tougher monsters to get experience for your weapons. It started to wear on me after a while. Like at first, it was a really cool system. I really thought it was fun, but as it took more and more, casts of a spell to level it up and more attacks to level up your weapons, it did start to get a bit tedious. But at that point, I was pretty much so powerful that I didn't really need to set aside specific grinding sessions. I could do, beef up my attributes while I was in the dungeon. But I will say this system definitely added to the overall length of the game, because in order to take advantage of this kind of a system, you had to prolong battles. You couldn't just stomp through them as fast as you could, because you wouldn't get as many attribute level ups that way. You had to actually prolong the fight, get as many casts in, get as many attacks in, damage your characters so their HP would get up. So I think I beat the game in a little over 30 hours, which is about twice that of Final Fantasy 1. And I don't really think the story was much longer. If I had just gone straight through the story, I don't think it was that much longer than the first one. I just think the fact that you had to take advantage of prolonging each battle individually caused it to be that much longer.